Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a beautiful day out there, and I always love that. It puts me in a good mood. Hey, before we get started, I want to give a quick tip, but also do me a favor. Let me know that you can see me on LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. Tell me where you're coming in from, and then uh, tell me 5x5 is a great way to say that you can hear me and see me, etc. Um, and as you're doing that, I want to give a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. I just posted this morning a document on LinkedIn, and that document is a U.S. Marine Corps AI implementation plan. So it's how they're rolling out AI throughout the entire Marine Corps, et cetera. It lays out their challenges, lays out their objectives, the guiding principles for using AI, and multi-year rollout. Like, how do they turn the Marine Corps into almost like an AI first entity that can begin to fight our nation's battles with the, taking advantage of AI. The tip I want to give you is, if I was you, I would use a document like that. Like, if I wanted to get in the Marine Corps, for sure, I would read that. But if I'm doing anything in IT or AI in particular, and I'm looking at the future of how I can help federal agencies, I would take that document, learn from it, and I would shape questions around. For example, they list out 5 or 6 challenges that I put in there. I would look at that challenge and see some of the ways they talk about it and turn it into a question and go back and talk to the Department of Commerce or, FEMA or whoever, right? Talk to other agencies. I would learn from what the Marine Corps is saying, and I would begin to have those kind of conversations with my customers. Don't feel like you have to do it from the scratch. I mean, these are some of the most brilliant people in the government writing these documents. Learn from them and use them to pursue other agencies. You can find out if some other agency has documents like that, and or whether you can get in there and shape that. So, okay, quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. Thank you for those of you putting in that you can hear, and 5x5. Do me a favor, just let us know who you are, put your core competency, your company, etc. And I'm going to get rocking and rolling. Let me turn this chat off, get to the formal part. So in today's training, I want to talk about federal revenue, right? That's why I gave it a good title here. One of the things I want you to think about when you're in today's training, and it's a question I try to put to people all the time: do you really want to have success in the federal market? Do you really want to have success in the federal market? Is it a passing desire to have success, or are you passionately driving towards that and you'll do what it takes? Success requires a strategy, right? It requires a plan. It's a proactive activity, not a success should be proactive, not reactive, right? And that's all what's inside of a strategy. Success requires a strategy. Hope, though, is not a strategy. There's a book out there, and I read it 20 years ago, I think now. It's a sales book, and it talks about, don't just hope for success. That's a reactive way of looking at life or looking at business. Instead, create a strategic plan. Have a strategy that drives towards the success you want. And for today's training, what I'm suggesting is that the best strategy you can have is to just show up. 90% of success, they say, is just showing up. And I'm part of that. I used to sell vacuum cleaners door to door. If I didn't go to the door and knock on the door, then I wasn't going to make a sale. There was a chance that if I went to the door, I also wasn't going to make a sale. But my chances of increasing sales massively went up when I went to the door. Now, to be candid, sometimes people would just come to our store and buy a vacuum cleaner. Like, it was the craziest thing ever. But 99.9% of the time, if I didn't show up at the door, I wasn't going to have the success. And it's the same thing here. If you don't show up where the federal government is buying, then you're not going to have success. And that's why I say your strategy for success could be put down to 2 simple words: show up. I would look at people on your team and say, hey, are you showing up? Are we showing up? You should ask yourself, am I showing up where I need to be showing up? If you want to have success, I think that is one of the biggest things you can do to try to move forward. And it's a great strategic motto, if you will. Just show up. I'm going to break down today's training on how to land federal. And I don't even know if I put that in there, but 3 revenue streams is the first thing I want to talk about. I've been teaching this since 2018, that there are 3 revenue streams. So I want to explain what they are, and I really want you to see the data behind that. Second thing I want to talk about is, like, once we're all on the same page about the data, I want to talk about why you should be pursuing all 3 revenue streams. I don't want to just say, hey, go pursue them, and I don't give you the reason behind it. So let me give you the reasons, some of the reasons behind it. And then I'm going to give you some tips on how to plan for growth in all three revenue streams. I'll say this again in a minute, but one of the key things to remember is if you're just getting started, let's say you're $1 million or below, one of the revenue streams you might not be able to go forward in. Well, you just plan for that revenue stream another year out, right? But eventually we get to this stage. What I do is provide tips for success for companies that are in this sweet spot that can do what I'm about to tell you. But my point is, make sure you know where your realistic starting point is, right? If I tell you something and you're a $10 million firm, you can absolutely do what I say. If I tell you something and you have no revenue, you got to tweak it a little bit to fit your current position. And I'll try to remind you throughout when that is. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I am co-founder of GovCon in a Box, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market after I got out of the Army as a small business government contractor. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. This is what I want for you. This is the three revenue streams I'm going to be talking about, the flow of money in the government. That's all just process. And so I'm really looking forward to talking to you about it to help you have more predictable success. If you haven't connected with me, connect on LinkedIn and subscribe to my newsletter, Government Contracting Success Newsletter. It's the largest newsletter in the government contracting space by far. It's bigger than DODs and SBAs. And the reason is because I put out really good content that is related to how you're doing sales in the federal market, how you can have success. Last thing I want to mention on this slide, the training for tomorrow. Let me just make it really big. Training tomorrow, you can see proactive federal sales success. And so I'm going to be talking to you tomorrow about my proven process for success in there that you can follow these tips. And so definitely join us. We got about 100 people coming in tomorrow for that training. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling into the meat of today's training, beginning with what are the three revenue streams that you should be looking at in the federal market. Really, 100%, there's only three ways you can make money in the federal market. You can subcontract under a small business prime contractor. You can you can prime contract with federal agencies, and you can subcontract under large prime contractors. I put these three revenue streams in this order because this is the order of how easy it is to do it. It's much easier to get a subcontract under a small business, another small business, than it is to get a prime contract or large. In fact, it's much harder to get a subcontract with a large business than it is to get a prime contract, right? Federal agencies absolutely are trying to work with small businesses, and they've got all sorts of programs that guide us towards that path. They have contracts that are much more a size that smalls can support than a large. Large businesses have certain requirements that they have. By the way, I have on the bottom this GovCon Chamber Summer Summit that we're hosting in July. And definitely join the wait list, but one of the groups of people I'm going to have there speaking are large business developer and capture people. So not SBLOs necessarily, the small business people, but the people who actually would add you to their team. They'll tell you why. So make sure you come into that to learn about it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, and let me make myself smaller here so you can see some of these numbers. I really want to just reinforce the three revenue streams by dollars. I said the first one is subcontracting under small business prime contractors. These are small businesses that have won contracts with the federal agency, right? And when I look at the data from FY 2024, so fiscal year 2024, just so everybody understands my process, I went to USA Spending, which is getting its data from FPDS, but it's just easier to look at. I went to USA Spending and I said, show me fiscal year 2024, only show me contracts, and only show me new contracts. And what that means is a contract that somebody has, the base year was in FY 2024. I wasn't trying to look at the numbers for option years. If there's an option year, that's not part of what I'm teaching you today. Sure, you can help those prime contractors, but that's not really what I'm trying to look at. So if you look at that, new contracts that went to small businesses in 2024, 2.7 million contracts were awarded in 2024. That's huge. That's a huge, huge amount. And you don't have to think about 2.7 million. Just imagine if there was 1,000 contracts awarded that were in your space. Do you think it's realistic that if the government awarded 2.7 million new contracts in 2024 to small businesses, 2.7 million, that there might be 1,000 contracts in that 2.7 million that align totally with what you sell? I'd be willing to bet there are, right? I know this from the data. I can pretty much pick any company and look in there. That's a reasonable guess, right? And then you go in and look at the data and you validate it. If we look at it beyond just the number of contracts, the value of the contracts in there is 1.6 or 116 billion, 116.6 billion, right? And this is in contract value awarded to small businesses in 2024. The way you look at it in USA Spending, if you want to repeat this kind of thing, is just look at the recipient type and choose small business or other than small, which I'll talk about in a second. Prime contract, number 2. Obviously, this is where you go get a contract with the federal government as the prime contractor. And in there, 5.4 million new contracts awarded in FY 2024. And anybody who's tracking the overall numbers, data, et cetera, remember, these are new contracts, not all contracts. And so the number would be much larger for how much was contracted. But I'm just talking about new contracts. There's 5.4 million, 377 billion in contract value. And now this next bullet number 3, is where you start seeing that number 2 numbers split. So 5.4 million, you see 2.7 was up on top for the smalls, and down on number 3, subcontracting under large prime contractors. They got 2.7 million contracts, new contracts awarded in 2024. Literally, some of those contracts are like billions of dollars. It's always fun to go in and see what they're winning, because I never played at that level, like personally winning at that level. Anyways, their value, 262 billion in contract awards. Now, keep these numbers in mind, because these are the 3 revenue streams that are out there. I'm going to tell you why you should be going down each one of these revenue streams, but I'm hoping you already look at this and go, I can already come up with my own reasons. And hopefully whatever I have on the next slide doesn't surprise you. It just locks in. Do me a favor. If this makes sense, put in 3 revenue streams into the chat. Just let me know you understand that there are 3 revenue streams that you can get money. The next slide I'm going to be talking about is why you should go do it. If you're not convinced already, let me show you why you should go do that. Okay, before I do, I just want to thank the sponsors for today's live. Graham, who does staffing and American Sign Language services. Reach out to Graham Inc. KZO does contract support. I think Kate might be in here, so make sure you see her in the chat and say hi. So is Graham. I know they're in here as well. But KZO, they do fractional finance and contract support, pre and post award. I was talking with Kate about how they really help you, once you win an award, make sure you don't do anything that interferes with your success in that award. And then Steel Toe down on the bottom left does cybersecurity and CMMC support. If you're looking into DoD, you definitely are looking at CMMC, so consider talking to Steel Toe. And then the last one is GovCon in a Box. Go check out our SaaS platform at govconinabox.com. We help you find and win opportunities, federal opportunities. And one of the things I just want you to go check out is make sure you're visible to federal buyer. We're going to the end of the year here, and I want to make sure federal buyers, like David Waltz, for example, who's in here today, can find you and reach out. By the way, I see Kami in here from Graham. Thank you for being a sponsor to the lives. Okay, so we talked about the 3 revenue streams: subcontract under a small, prime with a federal agency directly, subcontract under a large. Those are the only 3 ways you can make money in the federal market. No matter how you spin it around, basically it's that. Either you signed the paperwork with the government or somebody else signed it. Okay, so let's assume you already know why to prime contract and to pursue prime contracts. I feel like I don't have to convince anybody of that or even give you reasons. So let's move on to why you should consider subcontracting under a small and subcontracting under a large, in addition to your desire to prime contract with the federal agency. The first thing is you'll triple your revenue, theoretically, right? If you're only going after prime contracts with the federal government, that's 1/3 of the available revenue that you could be going after. But if you go after all 3, now you're tripling your revenue for the year. Maybe it's not tripling it, but you get my point, right? You have 3 of them in there, 3x in it. The second thing is you get to pursue much larger contracts. I had a customer where we were able to help them get on a team. They're a small business, and they were able to get on a team. I think they were doing just so I level set it, $3 to $5 million, somewhere in that range. And we were able to help them get on a team that was going after a $220 million contract, and they were able to get on there for 5% of that contract. That was huge. But to the prime contractor, this prime brought something that was massively helpful to him. Ironically, it was Microsoft SharePoint, which is what I used to do, but it was dashboarding and business intelligence. And so it was this big cyber contract, but they were cyber experts, not necessarily business intelligence type experts or dashboards in particular. And so they were able to get on that team, right? And so this small business at 3 to 5 million is never going after a contract that big. But when you're going after a contract and you get 5% of a $200 million contract, that's $2 million a year being added to their top line. That's a good contract to go after. You can do that when you go after, and that, by the way, was teaming with another small. That's not even talking about when you go to a large. I have another customer that won a $65, $70 million contract over 5 years for staffing, basically. That was huge for them. They were about 10 million and they landed that contract. But they could never have done that by themselves. That was a piece of a much, much bigger contract. And so you can pursue larger contracts. The third reason that I'm giving you here is that you can get into federal agencies where you're not inside the wire, where you don't have federal agency presence. By the way, if you don't understand the term get inside the wire, if you think about a military base as an example, they've got a wire fence all the way around. And the people who are incumbents are inside the wire. And those of us who are not incumbents or not working with that agency, we're outside the wire. That wire could be virtual, right? It could be, I just don't know anybody in that agency. And when you pursue all three revenue streams, then you're able to sit there and get into agencies that you don't have a presence. I remember too, when I realized how much larges use this as a strategy. I was working with Booz Allen, and this was, I don't know, 2015. So it was even before I started teaching government contracting. But I was working with Booz Allen as one of my prime contractors, and I noticed we were over here, and they asked if they could come in on a small contract, and I just thought it was like way too small for them. They're like, no, you get us in the door. We're in the door. Now we can start working our way through the whole agency. But they just had no presence where we were at. And so even larges do this kind of thing, right? And if you're trying to get into a particular agency that you don't have presence yet, one of the easiest paths is to team up with another company and be on their team as a subcontractor, small or large, doesn't matter. All right, number 4 that I have here, and sorry I didn't number them, but number 4, pursue contract set-asides in the different small business programs. And so an example is if you're a woman-owned small business, but you're not an SDVO, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, then you could team up with a company and subcontract under an SDVO to go after opportunities that are being set aside for that program. So there's 4 main small business programs. There's the women-owned small business program, SDVO, I just said, the Hub Zone, and the 8A. There's also, I think, Buy Indian Act, and there's a couple of others, right, that you can look at. If you can't get in there as a prime, then those other revenue streams, subcontracting and subcontracting, allow you to go in that path. And that ties into the last reason why you should be pursuing all these that I put in here, is that when you go after all 3 revenue streams, you can pursue opportunities that are not on the contract vehicles you have. In fact, the thing that is so poor about this is that if you're not on those contract vehicles, you don't even know the opportunities are coming out, being awarded to somebody else and moving on. Like after the fact, you're like, whoa, what happened? There's a line out there that says some people make it happen, some people watch it happen, and some people say, what happened, right? You want to eventually get yourself to making it happen. Right now, we might be in that stage of we're like, what happened? And in contract vehicles, it's kind of like that. It's like all these great opportunities came out. I'm like, whoa, what happened? Right? And then pretty soon I want to be able to say, hey, I'm watching it happen because now I have a partner who's letting me see into Oasis, or they're letting me see into Seaport Next Gen, and I can go with them. And the way I shift left to making it happen is now that I'm seeing in that contract vehicle, I can find opportunities that I know I can support. And then I go back to that teaming partner of mine and say, hey, thanks for letting me see the Seaport Next Gen opportunities. Here's one that I think we can win together. Let's go after it. And so you just went from saying what happened to watching it happen to making it happen. You do that by following these 3 revenue streams and teaming up with small and large businesses to subcontract under them. There's so many other great reasons on why to pursue the 3 revenue streams, but hopefully this makes sense to all of you. Okay, so let's go into the last slide here about how do you plan to start going down this path. If you didn't watch training I did, and I apologize, I do training every single day, so they all blend together for me sometimes. But I recently, like in the last 6-7 days, did training about how to plan for 2026, and I think it literally could have been yesterday. And this is how crowded my mind is. But I talked about a strategy wheel and how you can line up where you're getting prime contracting dollars from, which agencies, and where you're getting subcontracting from, which companies. And so go look at that plan. It lays it out in a different way. But that was generally about how to put a strategic plan in place for 2026. This slide is about how do you plan for growth in each one of these revenue streams. So the very first thing we need to do is have a clear, focused offer. This is your core competency. It needs to be really clear what you support, what you provide to your federal customers, or what you provide as a teammate to the prime contractors you're subcontracting under. An example is my last company. We were experts at Microsoft SharePoint. And the reason I looked down at my screen is because that's what I want you to put in the chat right now. Tell all of us, what is your company an expert at? We are experts at 1, 2, 3, or 4 words. Don't give me a long paragraph because I won't read it. I guarantee I won't read it. Not because I'm mean, but because the chats will all keep coming up. And then I'll see Chris Moffitt, and she says, we're experts at all things training or something. I'll read that. That's in my head. Or Rafa, we're experts at elevator services. Graham, we're experts at ASL services. These kind of things. Put that in the chat. We're experts at this. And Dave Walsh, you can play along too. What are you an expert at? Okay, so while you're putting in what you're an expert at so that we all can learn that, the second thing I want to tell you, after you make sure you have a clear core competency or focused offer, is to pick a target agency for your strategic growth. Don't say the federal government is my growth, right? That's too much. By the way, Elizabeth, I really want to get yours. Can you make it smaller, EJ? So then I'll look at it because I can't read all those words, but I want to read the words. So the second tip there, pick a target agency. If you try to go after the entire federal government, you're not going to have success. You're not going to be able to get in. No one's going to know where you're going or what you want to do. But if you sit there and say, I want to get into the Navy, that's where we're going, that's my primary target agency, then everything you start doing aligns with that. It doesn't mean just because you chose the Navy as a primary target agency and that's where you're going to be proactive about, it doesn't mean you can't be occasionally reactive, like Reginald for cloud services. Somebody comes over from DHS and says, Reginald, I got this slam dunk thing. It's 100% in the area. We'll write it. You just need to come along. Well, that's totally fine. He's going to keep pursuing the Navy, but it's okay to be a little reactive. But when you pick a target agency, that enables you to do the next steps on how to plan for your growth. The third step that I have here is you need to gather and grow 8 strategic small business strategic partners, right? You need to grab these 8 partners out of your primary target agency. If you chose the Navy, then you want these 8 strategic partners to come out of the Navy. And I've done tons, 100 plus trainings on how to build strategic relationships, what a strategic relationship is, but fundamentally, it's a commitment to mutual growth. That's when you know you have it. When I say grow 8 strategic small business partners, you want to make sure you're looking at partners who are in the Navy, if that's like our example agency, and you want a couple that are HubZone, a couple that are SDVO, a couple that are 8A, and a couple that are woman-owned small business, for example. When you do that, you have 8 strategic partners. You can go after any opportunity within the Navy. And if you're smart or lucky, not smart, that's not nice, but if you're lucky, they'll be on the contract vehicles that you want to get into. So the Navy has Seaport Next Gen as a primary contract vehicle for a lot of engineering services, et cetera. Well, you want to make sure your partners are on that. What's the point of having a strategic partner in the Navy who isn't on the Navy's contract vehicles, right? And by the way, when I say pick these 8, it doesn't mean I'm saying I'm not even having a relationship with all of you guys. No, I'll have a relationship. You're just not my strategic partners. My strategic partners I'm investing time into every single week. A little bit of time, but every single week I will invest to grow that relationship. So I'm looking at the Navy. I pick 8 strategic small business partners. Now I want to do the exact same thing with the larges. And this is where I went back earlier and said, if you're just getting started, you could pick the 8 larges, but just look at them as like a 1 or 2 year out relationship. For 2 years, you're just going to warm them up. You're going to see them, say hi, hey, what's up? You're going to engage with them, but you're really not going to work with them. But you will be positioning your company and yourself in a way that you will be able to join their teams when you're ready. But right now, if you're a small business doing less than 5 million, for example, most larges won't want to work with you. Billion-dollar firms, right? That's a general rule, but that's a really safe bet. It's much better to work with small businesses all doing 50 million or smaller. Okay, so you want to grow those 8 strategic smalls and 8 strategic larges. That's how you start getting into these paths. And then the last thing I want you to do is you already determined what do you sell, right? And I really appreciate people putting it in there. Compliance and assessment, I can see. Financial and budget support. So I appreciate you putting these in about what you sell, because I'm going to go back and look at them, and hopefully everybody else is as well. But you know what your core competency is. Now what I want you to do, the last suggestion, is identify slam dunk opportunities that both you and your strategic partners can go after. So in those 3 revenue streams, what are the slam dunks you can prime contract on? What are the slam dunks that you would need a small business teaming partner on? What are the slam dunks you need for large? You can go look at previous training I've done where I talk about you eventually want to get to this stage where you've got, let's say, 96 opportunities in your pipeline. I know it seems like a lot, but it's only 6 opportunities a year per strategic partner. So if you can manage 16 relationships throughout a year and track 6 opportunities with them throughout the year, then you have a potential for really growing at the pace you want in all 3 revenue streams. Okay, so here's what I want you to remember from today's training. The first thing is just remember there really are 3 revenue streams. There's 3 ways to make money in the federal government: small teaming, priming, and large teaming. The second thing is when you go after all 3 revenue streams, they will 3x your revenue. Right? Imagine if all you're doing is priming. All you're doing is going after the little bit of revenue that you can win. Even if you're a $20 million firm, you're going after the little bit of revenue you can win. But when you team up with other smalls and you team up with larges, you now have access to so much more revenue or potential revenue for you, right? And the third thing I want you to remember is that success requires these strategic partners. Strategic partners are not casual conference networking people. These are people you invest your time in to build a relationship. And I don't even really mean know my kids or that I like to sell. Know what I want to sell. I mean, know that I like to sail on water with my sailboat, right? I don't need you to know that. What I need you to know is which target agency am I going after? What do I sell? What's a good opportunity for me? That's what I mean when I say grow the strategic partners out there. And so your success in these 3 revenue streams requires that commitment to growing all 3 strategic partner types. Okay, hey, just a reminder, we've got the GovCon Summer Summit coming up in July. Join the wait list. You can see it right here, govconchamber.com/GovConRocks. Get in there and join there. It's going to be pretty heavily DoD focused for the first one. I think this is actually going to be something I'll do quarterly if I can really work out the kinks and you want this value. The way I know you want it is if you join the wait list. And as you head into your day and you start pursuing all 3 revenue streams, just remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.